Imagine walking into a tree so hard that your forehead, like, instantly turns bright red.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
Right. Just simply because you were staring at a bird on your smartphone screen instead of, actually looking at the ground.
That's a classic modern tragedy right there.
It really is. Or, okay, imagine eagerly taking this giant bite of a beautiful, perfectly baked chocolate cake.
Oh, I love chocolate cake.
Right. But then your face just physically recoils in disgust
Yeah.
because you accidentally used salt instead of sugar.
No, no. That is just, I mean, it's the visceral, unavoidable collision between what we expect to happen and what reality actually delivers.
Exactly. And, usually when you pick up a piece of source material designed for absolute beginners, like the one we have for today's deep dive, you really expect it to read like a dry instruction manual.
Yeah, totally. Like a textbook.
Right. You look at a simple sentence like, I like to run, and you expect the focus to just be on the mechanics.
Right, the subject, the verb, the infinitive.
Yeah, you just expect a basic tool for categorization.
Because, well, we're conditioned to view introductory texts as purely functional. I mean, we want them to give us the blueprints.
The grammatical X-ray, basically.
Exactly, the X-ray of how communication works, but without dealing with the messy, human reality of the building itself.
But today, we're completely throwing away that purely structural lens.
Good, let's toss it.
The source material we are unpacking today is this fascinating script. It's titled, What Do You Like to Do?
Such a simple question.
It is. And it was originally designed for an easy English channel aimed specifically at beginners.
Right, so the language is extremely accessible.
Very accessible. It features this highly accessible conversation between two characters, Emily and Paul, who are just casually chatting about their hobbies.
And, the genius of this text really lies in its restriction.
What do you mean by that?
Well, by stripping away all that complex academic jargon, Emily and Paul are essentially forced to use simple, unvarnished language.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide behind big words.
Exactly. And in doing so, they accidentally expose the raw psychological scaffolding of modern life.
Which is wild for a beginner's English text. And that is our mission today.
I'm ready.
We're going to explore how this easy-to-understand text about everyday hobbies actually provides a profoundly deep look at human nature.
It really does.
We're looking at the desperate modern struggle for work-life balance and the unfiltered vulnerability required to learn something new.
From the protective sanctuaries of 50-year-old black and white movies, right?
Yes, all the way to the physical hazards of the great outdoors. And then we'll even get into the glorious, unignorable sound of a beginner's guitar that sounds exactly like a loud cat.
A very loud cat. It really is a fascinating psychological case study disguised as a vocabulary lesson.
It is. And as we go through these triumphs and honestly, incredibly relatable tragedies of trying to have fun, I want you, the listener, to really be thinking about your own life.
Yeah, definitely reflect on your own routines.
We're going to be talking about the weird, wonderful, and sometimes embarrassing things people do in their free time. And we'd love to hear your stories in the comment section later on.
Please share them.
Seriously, keep your own loud cat moments in mind. But let's start indoors.
Good place to start.
The text opens with Emily and Paul discussing how they relax at home. And we are immediately presented with two completely divergent mechanisms for coping with the stress of existence.
Very different approaches, yeah.
Let's look at Emily first. She says that when she's at home, she is a big fan of watching old movies.
Right, and Paul actually asks for clarification there.
He does.
Yeah.
He asks movies from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And she confirms black and white films, alone, with a big bowl of popcorn.
This popcorn is key.
She describes this as so relaxing. So what is going on here psychologically?
Well, what's fascinating here is we need to understand the specific neurological function of nostalgia.
Okay, break that down for me.
Specifically mediated nostalgia, meaning, longing for a time you didn't necessarily live through.
Oh, like being nostalgic for the 1950s, even if you were born in the 90s.
Exactly. By deliberately choosing a 50-year-old black and white film, Emily is engaging in a profound act of sensory downregulation.
Wait, downregulation? Can you explain what you mean by that in this context? Because, I just watch old movies when I'm bored. I didn't realize I was downregulating anything.
Great one. A lot of people don't, but think about the media environment we currently inhabit.
It's loud.
It's incredibly loud. The content produced today is hyper-stimulating. It is algorithmically optimized to spike your dopamine and cortisol levels.
Yeah, it feels like everything is screaming at you.
Right, the cuts are fast, the colors are aggressively saturated, the sound design is engineered to keep your nervous system in this mild state of fight or flight.
Just so you don't click away to something else.
Exactly. Emily is actively rejecting that. A 50-year-old black and white movie operates on a completely different frequency.
It's a lot slower, for one.
Much slower, and the lack of color literally reduces the amount of visual data her occipital lobe has to process.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. So the cognitive load is objectively lighter.
Exactly. And she couples this reduced cognitive load with a highly specific, highly controlled physical ritual.
The popcorn.
Yes. She is alone, and she has a big bowl of popcorn. The popcorn provides a rhythmic, predictable, sensory anchor.
Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Right, and the solitude removes the unpredictable variable of other human beings.
People are definitely unpredictable variables.
They are. So she isn't just chilling out. She has constructed a highly effective, tightly controlled, parasympathetic sanctuary.
I love that phrase.
It is basically a fortress built out of popcorn and grayscale cinematography.
A fortress of popcorn. It's like an analog escape hatch from a digital world.
That's a great way to put it.
But then you look at Paul, and his approach to the indoors is almost the exact opposite.
It really is. Night and day.
He tells Emily that he plays board games with his family, which, sounds lovely and chaotic in its own way.
Very wholesome.
But then he drops a line that I think hits incredibly close to home for anyone working in the modern economy.
I know exactly the line you mean.
He says he plays video games on his computer. Emily's a bit surprised, but Paul gives this beautifully succinct justification.
It's so relatable.
He says it helps me focus on something different and forget about my emails.
Wow, yeah. That phrase, forget about my emails. That is the psychological crux of the modern worker's dilemma.
It's the universal struggle right now.
Absolutely. In behavioral psychology, there is a phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah. It dictates that humans remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks significantly better than completed ones.
Oh, wow. And an inbox is literally just a localized manifestation of the Zeigarnik effect.
It's the ultimate uncompleted task.
You can never truly finish your emails. There's always another one coming.
Precisely. The modern workday is an open system. It lacks clear boundaries, clear rules for victory, and a clear ending.
The emails follow you home in your pocket.
Right, they sit on your bedside table vibrating.
So true.
So when Paul tries to relax, he can't do what Emily does. If Paul sits alone in a quiet room watching a slow movie, the Zeigarnik effect will just take over.
His brain will just flood with anxiety about the uncompleted tasks in his inbox.
Exactly, because doing nothing leaves a vacuum, and the emails will just rush in to fill that vacuum.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So what does he do instead?
So Paul utilizes a mechanism called active decompression. He plays video games.
Active decompression. I like that.
Now, why video games? Because a video game is the absolute antithesis of his workday.
How so?
It is a closed system. It requires active, intense cognitive engagement, which forces the brain to allocate its resources away from the emails.
No, it demands too much attention for him to worry about work.
Right. Furthermore, games provide clear rules, immediate feedback, and definitive win-or-lose states.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, though. I want to push back on this.
Sure, go to...
If Paul is staring at a computer monitor all day, answering emails, and then he goes home and stares at a different computer monitor to play video games, isn't he just compounding the screen fatigue?
That's a very common concern.
Like, isn't that just replacing one digital stressor with another?
It's a very fair question, and it highlights a common misconception about cognitive fatigue.
Okay, what am I missing?
Well, the exhaustion we feel from work isn't just about photons hitting our retinas. I mean, it's about the ambiguity and the emotional weight of the tasks.
The never-ending nature of it.
Right. The emails represent infinite obligation. The video game, on the other hand, represents a bounded challenge.
Ah, I see.
When Paul is fighting a dragon or racing a car on his screen, his brain is experiencing the stress of the game, yes, but it is a highly predictable, manageable stress.
And it has an end.
Exactly. It resolves completely when he turns the console off. He defeats the boss, he gets the dopamine hit of completion, and the loop is closed.
So he is using the structured stress of the game to overwrite the unstructured ambient anxiety of his emails.
Beautifully stated, yes. He's fighting fire with fire.
But a much more fun, controllable fire. I get it. Now, Emily doesn't just watch movies indoors. She also has another hobby that perfectly illustrates the danger of moving from a predictable, closed system into the messy reality of the physical world.
Cooking.
Yes, she likes to cook, or, as she brilliantly labels herself in the text, she is a learning cook.
You know, adopting the identity of a learning cook is a fascinating psychological defense mechanism.
Defense mechanism. How so?
When you declare yourself a learner, you are actively neutralizing the ego threat of failure.
Oh, because you're already admitting you're not an expert.
Exactly. You are framing the activity not as a performance to be judged, but as a continuous process of experimentation.
And her experiments definitely have explosive results.
They do.
She tells Paul about a specific baking incident. She decided to bake a chocolate cake.
A classic endeavor.
Right. And according to Paul, who actually saw it, the cake looked beautiful.
This structure was there.
It was. But Emily makes a critical elemental error. She accidentally uses salt instead of sugar.
Oh, it's a classic heuristic trap in the kitchen.
Wait, a heuristic trap? What's that?
Yes. So our brains rely on mental shortcuts heuristics to save energy.
Yeah.
If you are baking and you need a granular white powder that usually sits in a specific spot in the pantry.
Your brain sees the white powder and just says, that's sugar, proceed.
Exactly. It bypasses the secondary verification step of actually tasting it or reading the label carefully because, well, 99 times out of 100, the shortcut works.
At the 100th time, you end up with a profoundly salty chocolate cake.
A terrible surprise.
And Emily describes the moment she took a bite. She says her face went, ugh, because the saltiness was just overwhelming.
And this is where the text moves from a simple anecdote to a profound statement on how humans actually acquire knowledge.
How do you mean?
Notice that the cake looked beautiful, the hypothesis was sound, the execution of the baking process was mechanically flawless.
It passed the eye test.
Right, the visual data returned a positive result. It wasn't until she ran the ultimate peer review, the taste test, that the structural integrity of her reality totally collapsed.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like learning a language, which is exactly what the target audience of this source material is doing.
Yes, exactly.
You can understand all the rules of the instruction manual. You can construct a sentence where the subject, the verb, and the object are perfectly aligned.
The grammar is technically beautiful.
Exactly, just like the cake. But if you swap out one vocabulary word for another, if you use the linguistic equivalent of salt instead of sugar, the entire flavor of the sentence is ruined.
It really is.
You might say something unintentionally offensive or completely nonsensical, and you don't realize it until you deliver that sentence to a native speaker.
And you watch their face make that exact same expression.
Exactly. You test it out, and the feedback is immediate.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The structure is merely the delivery mechanism for the ingredient.
But what is crucial here is how Paul responds to Emily's failure.
He's very supportive.
He is. He doesn't tell her she should give up baking. He simply says, that's how we learn.
He validates the somatic marker, the physical disgust of the unfait face, as a necessary data point on the path to mastery.
It takes an incredible amount of vulnerability to bake that cake again, or to speak that language again, knowing you might accidentally salt the batter.
It's terrifying, honestly.
But because she wears the badge of a learning cook, she and Paul can just laugh about it.
Yeah.
She's transformed a private shame into shared humor.
Which is so healthy.
It really is. And that makes me wonder about our listeners. What is your indoor fortress?
Yeah. What do you do?
When you need to clear the mental whiteboard of those endless emails, do you retreat into the analog safety of a 50-year-old movie? Or do you dive into the hyper-structured world of a video game? We would love to hear how you decompress in the comments section later.
It is deeply beneficial to interrogate our own routines. We often engage in these coping mechanisms without realizing the profound psychological heavy lifting they're actually doing for us.
Absolutely. But, as Emily rightly points out in the script, we need indoor hobbies for rainy days, but we also need to go outside.
A very healthy pivot.
Right. And this transition in the text introduces us to a whole new set of variables. The outdoors is not a closed system.
Not at all.
It is vast, unpredictable, and as we soon discover, it contains actual physical hazards.
Moving outdoors completely shifts the behavioral paradigm. Inside, we control the environment.
We control the popcorn and the screen.
Exactly. Outside, we are forced to negotiate with an environment that is entirely indifferent to our needs.
The trees don't care about you.
They really don't. And the text provides two starkly contrasting philosophies on how to conduct that negotiation.
Let's examine Paul's philosophy first. Paul is heavily kinetic. He mentions that he woke up early, went for a run in the shining sun, and felt extremely energetic.
A classic morning person.
Emily, meanwhile, woke up late and drank a massive cup of coffee just to get going.
I suspect a large portion of the audience operates on the Emily protocol there.
Oh, I am definitely on the Emily protocol. Give me the coffee. But Paul's relationship with the outdoors is intensely goal-oriented.
Very driven.
He says that when the sun is out, he feels compelled to go to the mountains. He loves hiking. Now, Emily, playing the role of the grounded skeptic, points out the obvious flaw in this plan. She asks, isn't it tiring?
She is questioning the logic of voluntarily subjecting oneself to physical exhaustion during one's leisure time.
Like, why work hard when you're supposed to be relaxing?
Right.
And Paul's answer is incredibly telling. He doesn't deny the exhaustion. He says, it can be hard, but when you reach the top, the view is amazing. You can see the whole world.
What's fascinating here is that Paul is articulating the concept of type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun.
Yeah, though we shouldn't just leave it at that buzzword. We really need to look at the neurochemical reality of what he's doing.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, type 1 fun is intrinsically rewarding in the moment. Eating a sweet cake, watching a movie, it provides a steady drip of dopamine.
It feels good right now.
Exactly. Type 2 fun, however, is physically or mentally miserable while it is occurring.
Oh, like running up a mountain.
Right. Your muscles ache, your lungs burn, your brain is screaming at you to stop, but the reward comes afterward.
In retrospect.
Yes, through a massive release of endorphins and serotonin upon completing the goal.
So why do we do it? I mean, if we have limited free time, why choose the option that involves suffering?
Because of the very nature of modern work we discussed earlier.
Oh, the emails.
Yes. Modern knowledge workers experience high levels of chronic, low-grade psychological friction, but very little physical friction.
Right. We just sit in temperature-controlled rooms, staring at screens.
Dealing with ambiguous social and professional problems, Paul hikes up a mountain because a mountain offers acute physical friction.
The challenge is literal.
Exactly. The rules are simple. Put one foot in front of the other against gravity. It is exhausting, but it is undeniably real.
And you definitely know when you've won.
Right. Conquering the mountain allows him to experience a tangible, undeniable victory, which is something the modern workplace rarely provides. The amazing view isn't just scenic, it is a neurological reset button.
The peak wouldn't feel amazing if there was an escalator to the top. The suffering is literally the currency that buys the view.
Beautifully said, yes.
But then we have Emily's outdoor philosophy, which acts as a complete counter-narrative to Paul's need for conquest. Emily says she prefers simple things. She rides her bicycle in the city.
And Paul, conditioned by his own goal-oriented mindset, immediately tries to validate her hobby through the lens of productivity.
He does. He says riding a bike is great exercise.
He immediately tries to optimize it. He assumes she's doing it for cardiovascular health.
But Emily rejects that framework entirely. She says, yes, but I go very slowly. I like to look at the shop windows and the flowers in the park.
She's completely unapologetic about it.
Okay, I have to jump in here, though. Let's really look at this. If you are riding a bicycle so slowly that you can comfortably window shop, is it actually an outdoor exercise hobby, or is it just a very leisurely stroll where you happen to be sitting on two wheels?
It is undoubtedly the latter, and that is precisely her point. Emily is engaging in a radical rejection of the quantified self movement.
Wait, the quantified self?
Yes, the modern obsession with tracking and optimizing every second of our existence.
Oh, like counting steps and calories.
Exactly. We wear smartwatches that track our heart rate, our steps, our sleep cycles. We try to beat our personal best. We basically turn our hobbies into secondary jobs.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Emily is acting as a modern flâneur. It's a French literary term for a wanderer, an observer of society who walks with no specific destination.
She is the anti-Peloton.
Absolutely. There is no leaderboard for observing park flowers.
She has completely decoupled her leisure time from productivity.
Exactly. And Paul realizes the profound wisdom in this approach. He listens to her and summarizes her philosophy perfectly. He says, that's the beauty of hobbies. There is no hurry and no stress.
That might be the most vital sentence in this entire text.
I agree.
Whether you are using the physical agony of a mountain climb to burn off your ambient anxiety, or pedaling a bike at 2 miles an hour just to look at a bakery window, the metric for success is entirely internal.
A true hobby must be a sanctuary from the demands of external optimization.
It's the difference between doing something to achieve an outcome and doing something simply to experience the process. Both are valid, but they soothe completely different psychological wounds.
Perfectly stated.
But of course, the outdoors doesn't always cooperate with our intentions. Which brings us to the third outdoor scenario in the text. This is, without a doubt, my absolute favorite part of the source material.
It's so good.
It's the birdwatching incident.
It is a brilliant, almost slapstick cautionary tale about the intersection of nature and technology.
It really is. Emily brings up the fact that Paul recently had a funny accident while he was birdwatching.
And Paul, to his credit, owns up to it immediately.
He does. He sets the scene.
Yeah.
He was out in the park, and he spotted a beautiful blue bird. Now, a generation ago, the hobby of birdwatching involved looking at the bird, perhaps through binoculars, and simply being present with the creature.
Just observing.
Right. But Paul is a creature of the 21st century. He doesn't just want to see the bird. He pulls out his smartphone. He wants to take a photo.
He feels the compulsion to capture the ephemeral moment and convert it into a permanent digital artifact.
Because if it's not on his camera roll, did it even happen?
Exactly. This reflects a massive shift in how humans interact with reality. We increasingly struggle to tolerate an unmediated experience. If we don't document it, we feel as though it didn't fully happen.
So he brings the phone up. He is now looking at the physical bird through the digital screen of his camera app.
A dangerous disconnect.
Very. He's framing the shot. He starts walking slowly, inching closer to get a better angle. He is entirely consumed by the two-dimensional representation of reality on his phone.
He's blind to everything else.
He admits to Emily, "I wasn't looking at the ground." And then, bang, he walks straight into a tree.
The ontology of the situation is just magnificent.
The ontology.
Yes, the nature of his reality. He is so focused on possessing the digital representation of nature that he is violently assaulted by the undeniable physical reality of nature.
The tree does not care about his Instagram feed.
Not at all.
The tree asserts its physical dominance. It just says, "Nope, I am here. You cannot swipe me away."
It is the ultimate grounding mechanism. When we filter our existence through a lens, whether it's the literal lens of a smartphone camera or the psychological lens of social media, we develop tunnel vision.
We lose the big picture.
We become entirely blind to the immediate peripheral context of our lives. Paul's collision is a physical manifestation of what happens when we lose touch with the ground beneath our feet.
And the tragic irony of the whole endeavor. He hit the tree, his forehead turned red, and the bird flew away anyway.
He lost on all fronts.
He suffered the physical trauma and didn't even secure the digital artifact. Nature entirely refused to be captured.
The bird escapes the digital cage, leaving Paul with nothing but a bruised forehead and a severely bruised ego.
But the true value of this story isn't the impact, it's the aftermath. There are other people in parks sitting on benches, and they witness this entire ridiculous sequence of events.
Of course they do. It's a public park.
And naturally, they laugh at him. Walking into a stationary object while staring at a phone is universally funny. But how does Paul react?
This is the crucial part.
He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't yell at the tree or scowl at the onlookers. He tells Emily, "My head was a little red, but I laughed too."
That shared laughter is a vital sociological tool.
Really? How so?
From an evolutionary psychology perspective, laughter often functions as a false alarm signal.
Oh, like letting the tribe know we're safe.
Exactly. It communicates to the group. An anomaly occurred, someone fell or was hit, but there is no real danger. By laughing at himself, Paul is immediately reintegrating into the social fabric.
He's de-escalating his own embarrassment.
Right. If he had reacted with anger or shame, he would have isolated himself. He would have become the crazy, angry man fighting a tree.
Nobody wants to be that guy.
No one. But by laughing, he accepts the absurdity of his own behavior. He implicitly acknowledges, yes, I was being a fool. I allowed the screen to blind me. The communal laughter completely diffuses the tension of the failure.
It's deeply humanizing. It's an admission that we are all just slightly ridiculous creatures trying to navigate a physical world that we frequently forget to pay attention to.
We're all just trying not to hit trees.
Seriously. And I know Paul isn't the only one. If you have ever had reality literally hit you in the face while you were staring at a screen, or if you've had a similar hobby disaster,
Like falling off a slow-moving bike.
or a kitchen experiment gone horribly wrong, we really want to hear about it. Think about those moments where you had to laugh at yourself, and please consider sharing them in the comments section today.
Our clumsy failures are often the moments that connect us most deeply to one another.
They really are. So we've explored the protective, analog fortresses of the indoors and the unpredictable, solid trees of the outdoors. But now the source text pivots into a deeper, much more vulnerable psychological territory.
We're shifting gears completely.
We move away from hobbies designed for relaxation or physical exertion and into hobbies designed for cognitive growth. Section 3 of our deep dive is all about the raw, unfiltered vulnerability of learning new skills.
This section forces us to confront the rigid armor of adulthood.
The armor.
Yes. From the time we graduate school, we spend an immense amount of our cognitive energy building and maintaining competence.
We want to look like we know what we're doing.
Exactly. We strive to be experts at our jobs, capable partners in our relationships, and functional citizens who know how to navigate the world without looking foolish. We despise the feeling of incompetence.
It's uncomfortable.
Very. And then Emily voluntarily decides to learn how to play the guitar.
Which is incredibly hard.
Precisely. To voluntarily adopt a difficult new hobby as a competent adult is to intentionally strip off that armor and walk out into the world entirely unprotected. It is an act of psychological rebellion against your own ego.
Emily tells Paul about her new guitar, and Paul immediately recognizes the physical toll of stringed instruments. He asks, "Is it hard for your fingers?"
Anyone who plays knows that pain.
Right. And Emily admits, "My fingers hurt a lot." But as anyone who has ever learned an instrument knows, the physical pain of calluses forming is absolutely nothing compared to the auditory, ego-crushing reality of being a beginner.
The sound of failure.
Exactly. Emily confesses to Paul that sometimes when she practices, she sounds like a very loud cat.
What's fascinating here is the specific imagery of the very loud cat. It's brilliant because it highlights the spatial dominance of auditory failure.
The spatial dominance.
Right. If you are learning to watercolor or learning to knit, your mistakes are quiet. They are confined to the canvas or the needles. If you mess up, you can simply crumple the paper and throw it in the trash. No one has to know.
But music doesn't work like that at all. Sound waves expand in all directions.
Exactly. The sound of a loud cat fills the entire room. It penetrates the walls. It demands to be heard by your family, your roommates, perhaps even your neighbors.
It is a public broadcast of your own incompetence. You cannot hide it.
You are forcing everyone around you to endure your learning process.
Which raises the million-dollar question. Why does she persist? Why push through the bleeding fingers and the public caterwauling?
It's a great question.
Paul tries to be polite. He offers her a lifeline by saying, "My cat. I'm sure you're better than that." But Emily weighs off the compliment. She embraces her loud cat status.
She owns it.
She tells him, "It's okay, because learning something new makes life interesting. It makes me feel like a student again."
Makes me feel like a student again. We need to pause and really examine the neurobiological weight of that statement.
Let's do it.
The adult brain is essentially an efficiency machine. Left to its own devices, it seeks out ruts.
Ruts, like habits.
Yes, it builds heavily myelinated neural pathways for the tasks we perform every day, driving the same route to work, answering the same types of emails, making the same coffee, and it aggressively prunes away the pathways we don't use.
Use it or lose it.
Right. It wants to run on autopilot because autopilot consumes less metabolic energy.
So when you force your brain to learn a complex, novel motor skill, like coordinating both hands to play different chords on a guitar,
Yeah.
your brain actually fights back.
It resists entirely. You are forcing neuroplasticity. You are demanding that the brain build new synapses, which is metabolically expensive and incredibly frustrating.
It physically feels hard.
Yes. The student mindset that Emily is talking about, which actually mirrors the Zen boost concept of Shoshin, or beginner's mind, is a state of radical openness and a complete lack of preconceptions.
Beginner's mind.
Right. When you are an expert, your mind is full. It relies on those efficient heuristics we discussed earlier. But when you are a beginner, your mind is empty. It is forced to pay attention to every granular detail.
You completely break the autopilot.
You have to.
Emily is willingly trading the comfortable low-energy state of being a competent adult for the electric, painful, high-energy thrill of being an empty vessel again. She realizes that the friction of learning the very thing our brains try to avoid is exactly what makes life interesting.
It re-enchants the world. It reminds you that you are not a finished product.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I think of that loud cat sound, not as a failure, but as a mandatory toll booth on the highway to competence.
A toll booth. I like that.
You literally cannot bypass the toll booth.
Yeah.
Every single guitar virtuoso in history, Jimi Hendrix, Prince, whoever, they all spent time in the loud cat phase.
Every single one of them.
They all paid the toll in bruised fingertips and bruised egos. The only difference between them and the person who quits is that they didn't let the public broadcast of their incompetence stop them from picking up the instrument again the next day.
That is exactly right. The toll is absolutely non-negotiable.
And what's beautiful is that Emily's vulnerability is entirely contagious. Paul is so inspired by her willingness to be bad at the guitar that he decides he wants to pay a toll of his own.
He wants in on the beginner's mind.
He does. He tells her he wants to try drawing. And when she asks what he plans to draw, he delivers the greatest punchline of the text.
It's so good.
He said, maybe I can draw the trees I walk into.
This is a masterclass in psychological sublimation.
Sublimation, yes.
Sublimation is a mature defense mechanism where socially unacceptable impulses or conscious frustrations are consciously transformed into socially acceptable actions or behavior.
So turning lemons into lemonade, but psychological.
Basically, yeah. Paul experienced a moment of public embarrassment and physical trauma when he walked into the tree.
The tree exerted its dominance over him.
It certainly did.
Yeah.
And instead of avoiding that park forever out of shame or being angry at his own clumsiness, he chooses to transform the trauma into art.
He's going to draw it.
He is going to study the tree. He's going to render its likeness on paper. By drawing the tree, he reclaims his agency. He masters the object that previously mastered him.
It is the ultimate pivot. He's basically saying, I didn't fail at walking. I was simply conducting aggressive, full-contact field research for my upcoming sketch.
Full contact field research, exactly.
I love the resilience of that.
Okay.
And it prompts a very real question for anyone listening to this deep dive right now. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be truly unapologetically bad at something new?
It's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is. When was the last time you embraced the loud cat phase of a skill? Not because it would look good on your resume or because you could monetize it on the internet, but simply for the sheer vulnerable joy of waking your brain up.
It is a terrifying place for an adult to be, but it is the only place where true growth happens.
It is an essential exercise in humility.
The danger of adulthood is surrounding yourself only with tasks you have already mastered. If you are always the most capable person in the room, you are stagnating. You must constantly seek out the room where you are the student again.
Which transitions us perfectly into the final section and really the ultimate takeaway of this entire source text.
The big finale.
Up to this point, Emily and Paul have discussed hobbies as a means of escape, as a way to challenge themselves physically, or as a tool for creative vulnerability. But in the closing moments of their conversation, Emily drops a piece of advice that completely reframes the relationship between work, learning, and leisure.
She delivers what amounts to a pedagogical masterclass, quietly disguised as a simple tip for English beginners.
Paul asks her directly, do you have a tip for our friends learning English? And Emily responds with a 5-word directive. She says, make English your hobby.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Like a motivational poster in a classroom?
It really does, but I know there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. The neurobiological and linguistic mechanics behind this advice are incredibly sophisticated.
Paul asks her how to actually do that, and Emily elaborates. She explicitly warns against traditional brute force memorization. She says, don't just study grammar.
A controversial statement in some classrooms.
Right. Instead, she advises the listener to merge the difficult goal of learning the language with the activities they already intrinsically enjoy. She says, if you love cooking, watch cooking videos in English. If you love games, play them in English.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what Emily is describing here aligns closely with the comprehensible input hypothesis.
The comprehensible input hypothesis.
Yeah, it's a highly influential concept in linguistics championed by researchers like Stephen Kreischen. But we have to look specifically at the affective filter component of that theory to understand why Emily's advice is so powerful.
The affective filter, what is that?
Think of it as an emotional blockade in the brain. The traditional method of learning a language or any complex subject usually involves sitting in a classroom, studying rules in isolation, memorizing verb conjugations out of context, and taking tests.
Boring and stressful.
Exactly. This environment is highly stressful. It creates anxiety. When a student is anxious, bored, or afraid of making a mistake, their affective filter goes up.
And what happens then?
This filter literally blocks the brain from processing and acquiring new language inputs, no matter how much they study.
So sheer willpower isn't just exhausting, it's actually inefficient because the stress of studying actively blocks the learning.
Exactly. Willpower is a finite resource. Eventually, the cognitive friction is too much, the filter goes up, and the student quits.
That explains so many failed New Year's resolutions.
But what Emily proposes is an end run around the affective filter entirely. She suggests attaching the difficult task of language acquisition to an established, natural, dopaminergic pathway.
Like watching a cooking video.
Yes. If you love cooking, watching a cooking video provides intrinsic pleasure. Your brain desperately wants to know how the recipe turns out.
You're invested in the outcome.
If you watch that video in English, your brain is no longer focused on the painful friction of studying. The affective filter drops completely.
Because you're relaxed and entertained.
Right. Your brain begins using the English language as a survival tool to achieve the reward, which is understanding the recipe.
Oh, wow. The English goes from being the destination to simply being the vehicle you use to get to the destination.
Precisely. The friction disappears. You aren't forcing yourself to memorize a vocabulary list. You are indulging in your hobby. And the language acquisition happens passively, almost as a side effect.
That's brilliant.
You learn the English word whisk, not because you stared at a flashcard for 10 minutes, but because you desperately needed to know what tool the chef was holding to fix the sauce.
The context anchors it.
The context anchors the vocabulary into your long-term memory far more effectively than rote memorization ever could, because it is tied to genuine interest and emotion.
Okay, let's unpack this. I have to push back on this, though. Is it genuinely that simple?
It's a fair challenge.
Can you really just abandon the grammar books entirely?
Yeah.
Like, let's say I want to learn Italian. If I just watch 1,000 hours of Italian cooking shows, am I eventually going to be able to negotiate a complex business contract in Rome?
Probably not a contract, no.
Doesn't relying entirely on context risk the fossilization of bad habits? It feels like you still need the foundation.
That is a very valid critique, and it's actually one of the primary arguments against relying solely on comprehensible input. You can indeed fossilize incorrect grammar if you never formally study the rules.
Right. You might sound fluent, but be grammatically completely wrong.
You cannot abandon the structure entirely. However, we have to look closely at what Emily actually says in the text. She doesn't say grammar is useless.
What does she say?
She says, don't just study grammar. She is addressing a problem of proportion.
Proportion. Right. Most beginners spend 90% of their time agonizing over the instruction manual and maybe 10% actually trying to use the language.
Exactly. Emily is advocating for flipping that ratio. The grammar book provides the blueprint, but the context provides the building materials.
If you spend all your time reading the blueprint, you will never build the house.
Never.
So what does this all mean? Tying it all together, the instruction manual matters, but only when you actually apply it to something you care about.
It has to be relevant to your life.
The grammar book builds the engine, but the cooking video, or the video game, is the gasoline that actually makes the car move.
Great analogy.
If learning feels like a chore, your affective filter will block it and you will quit.
Yeah.
But if learning feels natural, if it feels like playing your favorite game or baking your favorite cake, you will engage with it every single day.
You take the friction of learning and you cloak it in the fun of your hobby.
You basically trick your brain into absorbing the complex data by wrapping it in something deeply enjoyable.
Or, in the case of Emily's baking adventure, something very salty.
Which brings us brilliantly full circle. As we near the end of this deep dive, I want to take a moment to look back at the truly massive amount of ground we've covered today, all extracted from a simple, beginner-level conversation between two people named Emily and Paul.
It's amazing how much depth was hidden in there.
We began by examining the psychological necessity of the indoor fortress, looking at how 50-year-old black and white movies serve as a parasympathetic sanctuary against a hyper-simulating world.
And we looked at the Zeigarnik effect and how active decompression through closed-system video games helps us build a wall against the infinite, open-ended anxiety of our modern emails.
We celebrated the brave, salty failures of the learning cook, discovering how heuristics can betray us, but how the somatic marker of a terrible mistake is the very thing that cements our learning.
And then we stepped outside and contrasted Paul's pursuit of type 2 fun conquering a mountain to earn an amazing view with Emily's radical anti-optimization joy of riding a bike just to look at flowers, embracing the beauty of no hurry and no stress.
We witnessed the absolute dangers of the digital cage, where Paul's attempt to capture a bird on a screen resulted in a violent, undeniable collision with the physical reality of a tree.
And we noted how communal laughter acts as a vital de-escalation tool for our egos in those moments.
We embraced the physical and emotional toll of the loud cat phase, understanding that the metabolic cost of the student mindset is the mandatory entry fee for adult neuroplasticity.
And we admired the psychological sublimation of choosing to draw the very obstacles that trip us up.
And finally, we uncovered the ultimate hack for lifelong growth. Bypassing the brain's affective filter by taking the things we struggle to learn and weaving them directly into the hobbies that already bring us joy.
It is a remarkable testament to the hidden depth of everyday human experience.
It is. The most profound truths about how we survive, how we cope, and how we grow are often found in the simplest, most unassuming language.
The instruction manual might look basic on the surface, but once you start reading between the lines, you realize it's describing the architecture of the human soul.
The complexity is always there, waiting for us to pay attention to it.
It truly is.
And that brings me to my final and really my most important point of the day. This deep dive isn't a one-way street, and it isn't over until you weigh in.
We need to hear from you.
We have spent this entire time analyzing Emily and Paul, but we are incredibly curious about what makes you feel alive. What do you like to do?
Please drop into the comments.
Think about the mechanisms we've discussed today and head over to our page to share your own hobbies with us. Are you a mountain conqueror seeking Type 2 fun or a slow biker enjoying the process?
Are you a gamer actively blocking out your emails? Or learning cook making beautiful salty mistakes?
We want to read all about your passions, your loud cat moments, and your tree walking disasters. So please, share them.
And as you think about what to share, I'll leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Oh, I'm ready. What is it?
We talked extensively today about how to make the hard, frictional work of learning into a relaxing hobby. But consider the reverse.
The reverse.
Yes. Is there a relaxing, perhaps entirely mindless routine you currently do every single day, like scrolling through your phone on the train or taking the exact same walk around your neighborhood, that if you suddenly applied that curious, vulnerable student mindset to it, could completely transform how you view the world around you?
Oh, wow.
What if you tried to sketch the people you pass by every day? What if you became a dedicated student of your own mundane routine?
Wow. That is a brilliant challenge. It completely flips the dynamic. You stop being a passive passenger in your own life and start actively investigating it. The instruction manual is in your hands, but it is up to you to actually build something meaningful with it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep embracing the loud cat phase, keep laughing at the trees you walk into, and we'll see you next time.